The stars twinkled peacefully in the night sky over Earth. It was a calm evening, much like any other. People went about their lives, unaware of the storm that was about to break. In Chicago, John Miller, a mechanic with grease-stained hands and a quiet demeanor, was closing up his shop. He glanced at the sky for a moment, admiring its beauty, before heading home. Little did he know, those same stars would soon bring chaos to his world. Far above Earth's atmosphere, something stirred. A fleet of massive ships emerged from a rippling distortion in space. These were not human vessels. They belonged to the Silothian Empire, an alien civilization known for its ruthless expansion across galaxies. The ships were enormous, each one larger than a city, their metallic surfaces glinting ominously under the light of the distant sun. At the helm of the fleet stood Commander Vorik, a towering insectoid creature with 6 limbs and eyes that glowed like molten gold. His voice boomed through the communication systems of every ship as he addressed his crew. "This planet will fall," he declared, his tone cold and final. "Resistance is futile." Back on Earth, Rachel Dawson, a news anchor with a warm smile and sharp instincts, sat in her studio preparing for the late-night broadcast. She had no idea her career, and perhaps her life, was about to change forever. Suddenly, all screens around the globe flickered. Television sets, smartphones, even digital billboards lit up with the same image. The face of Commander Vorik. His sharp features filled the screen, striking fear into anyone who looked at him. Behind him loomed the silhouette of his flagship, a monstrous vessel bristling with weapons. "People of Earth," Vorik began, his voice deep and mechanical, translated into every language on the planet. "You are now part of the Silothian Empire. Your resources, your labor, and your loyalty belong to us. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction." The message ended abruptly, leaving billions of humans staring at blank screens or replaying the chilling words in their minds. Panic spread quickly. Streets filled with people looking upward, searching for signs of the invaders. Social media exploded with theories, prayers, and cries of despair. Governments scrambled to respond, but no one knew what to do. The military mobilized jets and tanks, though many doubted they could stand against such advanced technology. John Miller watched the news unfold from his couch, gripping a cup of coffee tightly. His mind raced with questions. What did these aliens want? And why had they chosen Earth? In Washington, D.C., President William Hayes stood in the Situation Room surrounded by advisors. Maps and satellite images covered the walls, showing the positions of the alien fleet. "We need answers," Hayes said firmly, his voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "What are our options?" One of his generals hesitated before replying. "Sir, we don't have anything capable of taking down ships that size." Not yet. But there was hope, though few outside a select circle knew about it. Deep beneath Antarctica, hidden away in a secret facility, scientists worked tirelessly on Project Eclipse. Dr. Laura Bennett, the lead physicist, stared at monitors displaying data streams from experimental weapons. Her team had spent years reverse engineering alien tech found buried in the ice. Now, their work might be humanity's only chance. Still, the prototypes weren't ready for mass deployment. Time was running out. As dawn broke, the first Silothian scout ships descended toward Earth. Their sleek forms cut through the atmosphere, leaving trails of fire behind them. Cities trembled as the ships landed, their hulking shapes casting long shadows over streets filled with terrified citizens. The invasion had begun. Humanity held its breath, wondering if this would be the end, or the start of something far greater. While chaos erupted across the globe, a secret that had been hidden for decades finally came to light. Beneath the icy expanse of Antarctica, in a facility buried deep within the frozen wilderness, a team of scientists worked feverishly. Dr. Laura Bennett moved between monitors, her sharp eyes scanning lines of data. Around her, engineers and technicians adjusted dials, checked circuits, and tested prototypes. This was Project Eclipse, humanity's last hope against the Xylothian invaders. Years earlier, researchers had discovered fragments of alien technology encased in ancient ice. At first, they thought it was debris from a meteorite or some long-forgotten experiment. But as they studied it, they realized the truth. It was far more advanced than anything humans had ever created. The discovery sparked a race to understand and replicate the technology. What started as a small research project grew into a global effort, funded by governments desperate to prepare for the unknown. Now, with the Xylothians hovering above Earth, their work took on new urgency. The heart of Project Eclipse was a weapon unlike any other. It didn't rely on bullets or explosives, but instead harnessed energy in ways most people couldn't comprehend. Early tests showed it could vaporize steel instantly. When fired at living tissue, the results were even more devastating. The weapon wasn't perfect. It overheated quickly and required immense power. But it was humanity's best chance against an enemy armed with superior technology. President William Hayes knew about Project Eclipse. In fact, he had authorized its creation years ago, though few others in government were aware of its existence. As the invasion unfolded, he called an emergency meeting with his top advisors. "We need those weapons now," he said firmly, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. A general nodded, adding, "Sir, we can deploy what we have, but it won't be enough to take down their entire fleet. We'll need time to scale up production." Time was something Earth didn't have. The Xylothian scout ships had already landed in major cities, and their soldiers, towering insectoid creatures with armored bodies and razor-sharp claws, were beginning to march through the streets. Civilians fled in terror as buildings crumbled under the aliens' sheer strength. In Los Angeles, police officer Sarah Lewis found herself face to face with one of the invaders. She raised her standard-issue pistol and fired, but the bullets bounced harmlessly off its thick exoskeleton. Her heart pounded as she realized how outmatched they were. But then, reinforcements arrived. A convoy of military vehicles roared into the city, carrying soldiers equipped with prototype Eclipse rifles. Among them was Captain Emily Gray, a seasoned officer tasked with leading one of the first combat teams to use the new weapons. She stepped out of her vehicle, gripping the sleek rifle tightly. Its design was unlike anything she'd ever seen, smooth, metallic, and humming faintly with power. "Stay behind me," she ordered her squad as they approached the Xylothian soldier. When the alien lunged forward, Emily squeezed the trigger. A beam of blinding blue energy shot from the rifle, striking the creature squarely in the chest. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a flash, the alien disintegrated into ash. Silence fell over the street as everyone stared in disbelief. One of the soldiers whispered, Did we just kill it?" Emily didn't answer. Instead, she turned to her team. "Reload and move out. There are more of them." News of the successful tests spread quickly. Across the planet, reports poured in of similar victories. Wherever Eclipse weapons were deployed, the Xylothians fell. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity felt a flicker of hope. President Hayes addressed the nation, standing tall behind a podium as cameras broadcast his speech worldwide. "We are not defenseless," he assured the terrified population. "Our scientists and soldiers have given us the tools to fight back. Together, we will protect our home." Yet even as cheers erupted in some corners of the world, others remained cautious. The Xylothian fleet still loomed menacingly in orbit, its numbers vast and its firepower unmatched. The scout ships were only the beginning. Everyone knew the real battle was yet to come. Back in the Antarctic facility, Dr. Laura Bennett stared at the clock on her wall. Time was running out, and the pressure weighed heavily on her shoulders. Humanity had struck its first blow, but the war was far from over. The streets of Los Angeles were eerily quiet now, save for the distant hum of alien machinery and the occasional crackle of energy weapons. Smoke curled into the sky from burning buildings, painting the horizon in shades of gray and orange. The Xylothians had arrived with brute force, their towering forms casting long shadows over the city. But humanity was fighting back and winning. Sarah Lewis stood near the edge of a crumbling sidewalk, her hands trembling slightly as she reloaded her Eclipse rifle. She wasn't a soldier by training. She was just a police officer trying to protect her city. Yet here she was, standing shoulder to shoulder with Captain Emily Gray and a small team of volunteers. They had been sent to secure a key intersection, where reports indicated a group of Xylothian soldiers was gathering. If they could hold this position, it would give the military time to regroup and plan their next move. "Stay sharp," Emily said, her voice calm but firm. Her eyes scanned the area, searching for movement. Behind them, a handful of civilians huddled in the doorway of an abandoned shop, too scared to flee but unwilling to leave the relative safety of the armed group. One of them, a young man named Alex Carter, clutched a first aid kit tightly. He wasn't trained for combat either, but he'd insisted on helping however he could. Suddenly, the ground shook as 3 Xylothian soldiers emerged from around a corner. Their armored bodies gleamed under the dim light of flickering street lamps, and their multifaceted eyes glinted menacingly. The creatures moved with unnatural speed, their claws clicking against the pavement as they advanced. Sarah's breath caught in her throat, but she forced herself to raise her weapon. "Hold your fire until they're close," Emily ordered. The aliens charged forward, their guttural roars echoing through the empty streets. When they were within range, Emily shouted, "Now!" A barrage of blue energy beams erupted from the rifles, striking the Xylothians with pinpoint accuracy. The first alien collapsed instantly, its body dissolving into ash. The second stumbled, its exoskeleton cracking under the intense heat of the blasts. Only the third managed to close the distance, swinging its massive claw toward Emily. She dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the blow. Rolling to her feet, she fired again, hitting the creature square in the chest. It let out a deafening screech before disintegrating like the others. For a moment, silence fell over the group. Then one of the soldiers, a young man named Ryan, exhaled loudly. Did we really just do that?" he asked, his voice shaking. Emily nodded, though her expression remained grim. "We did, but there are more of them out there. We can't afford to lose focus." She glanced at Sarah, who still looked pale but determined. "You're doing great," Emily added softly. Sarah gave a weak smile in response. As the team regrouped, news began filtering in from other parts of the world. In Tokyo, civilian volunteers armed with Eclipse pistols had driven back a squad of Xylothians attempting to seize control of a power plant. In London, a group of engineers used modified Eclipse tech to disable an alien scout ship, causing it to crash into the Thames. Everywhere, stories of improbable victories spread like wildfire, boosting morale across the globe. But not all battles went so smoothly. In New York City, chaos reigned as Xylothian forces overwhelmed local defenses. The invaders' sheer numbers made it difficult for even the most advanced weapons to keep up. Reports described scenes of destruction: collapsed skyscrapers, burning cars, and streets littered with debris. Yet even there, pockets of resistance held strong. Ordinary citizens banded together, using whatever tools they had to fight back. Some wielded Eclipse rifles distributed by the military, while others improvised weapons from everyday objects. Back in Los Angeles, Sarah and her team pressed on, moving deeper into the city. They encountered more Xylothian patrols, each engagement growing increasingly intense. Despite the odds, they continued to prevail, thanks in large part to the devastating power of the Eclipse weapons. Still, the cost of victory weighed heavily on everyone. Every shot fired reminded them of how fragile life truly was. By nightfall, the team reached their objective: a communications tower that the Xylothians had seized earlier. Retaking it would allow Earth's forces to coordinate their efforts more effectively. As they prepared for the assault, Emily turned to her team. "This is it," she said. "If we succeed, we give humanity a fighting chance. If we fail, She didn't finish the sentence. There was no need to. Everyone understood what was at stake. With a deep breath, Sarah tightened her grip on her rifle. She may have been an ordinary person thrust into extraordinary circumstances, but she knew one thing for certain. She wouldn't go down without a fight. The battle for the communications tower was fierce. Philuthian soldiers swarmed the area, their glowing eyes scanning every shadow, every movement. They had fortified the structure, turning it into a fortress of alien technology and brute force. For Sarah Lewis and her team, the mission seemed almost impossible. But they didn't have a choice. If humanity wanted to fight back effectively, they needed that tower. Captain Emily Gray led the charge, her Eclipse rifle blazing as she fired at the nearest enemy. The blue beams cut through the air, striking the Philuthians with deadly precision. One by one, the towering creatures fell, their bodies disintegrating into ash. Yet for every alien they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. The invaders were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. Still, Emily pushed forward, her determination unwavering. "Stay close," she shouted over the chaos. "We can't let them split us up." Behind her, Sarah moved cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. She wasn't used to combat, but she had learned quickly. Every shot she fired brought a mix of fear and adrenaline. Beside her, Alex Carter stayed ready with his first aid kit, patching up minor wounds whenever someone stumbled or got grazed by shrapnel. "Keep moving," Ryan urged, his voice tight with tension. He carried an extra rifle slung over his shoulder, just in case someone ran out of ammunition. The team reached the base of the tower, where the fighting grew even fiercer. The Philuthians had set up energy barriers around the entrance, forcing the humans to find another way inside. Emily studied the situation carefully, her mind racing. "We need to disable those barriers," she said, pointing to a control panel mounted on the wall nearby. It was heavily guarded, but if they could reach it, they might be able to shut down the defenses long enough to breach the tower. Sarah nodded, gripping her rifle tightly. "I'll cover you," she offered, surprising even herself with her courage. Emily gave her a quick nod of approval before signaling for Ryan and another soldier to follow her. Together, they darted toward the control panel, firing constantly to keep the aliens at bay. Sarah stood her ground, aiming carefully and picking off any Xylothian that tried to intercept them. Her hands shook, but she didn't falter. Not now. Not when so much depended on their success. Finally, Emily reached the panel and began working on it. Her fingers flew over the unfamiliar controls, trying to decipher the alien symbols. Behind her, Ryan and the other soldier formed a protective circle, shielding her from incoming attacks, just as an Xylothian lunged toward them. Sarah fired, hitting it squarely in the head. The creature collapsed, buying Emily precious seconds to finish her work. With a loud hum, the energy barriers flickered and died. "Now," Emily yelled, motioning for the team to move. They sprinted toward the entrance, dodging blasts of alien energy as they went. Inside, the tower was dimly lit, its walls lined with strange machinery that pulsed faintly with light. The air smelled metallic, and the floor vibrated under their feet. It felt like stepping into the belly of a beast. The team moved quickly, clearing each room as they ascended the tower. Along the way, they encountered more Xylothians, but the Eclipse weapons gave them an edge. Each victory fueled their resolve, pushing them closer to their goal. By the time they reached the top floor, exhaustion weighed heavily on everyone. But they couldn't stop. Not yet. In the main control room, they found what they were looking for: a massive console linked to Earth's communication systems. Emily immediately began working on it, her fingers flying across the alien interface. Outside, the sounds of battle continued to rage, a reminder that the war was far from over. But here, in this room, hope flickered to life. If they could regain control of global communications, humanity would finally have a chance to coordinate its defenses properly. As Emily worked, Sarah kept watch, her rifle trained on the door. She thought about all the people counting on them, the families hiding in basements, the soldiers fighting on the front lines, the scientists working tirelessly to improve the Eclipse weapons. This wasn't just about retaking a tower. It was about giving humanity a fighting chance. And no matter how scared she was, she knew she wouldn't give up. Not now. Not ever. The control room buzzed with tension as Emily Gray worked furiously to override the Xylothian systems. Her hands moved quickly over the alien console, trying to make sense of its strange symbols and glowing panels. The air was thick with the hum of machinery, and every few seconds, the tower shook from explosions outside. Sarah Lewis stood by the door, her Eclipse rifle ready, scanning the corridor for any sign of the enemy. Behind her, Alex Carter tended to a small cut on Ryan's arm, his hand steady despite the chaos. "It's almost done," Emily muttered, her voice strained but focused. She had spent years studying alien tech, but this was different. The Xylothian systems were far more advanced than anything she'd encountered before. Still, she refused to give up. Humanity's survival depended on her success. With one final adjustment, the console lit up in a burst of blue light. A holographic map of Earth appeared in the center of the room, displaying real-time data about the invasion. "We're in," Emily said, relief washing over her face. "I've regained access to global communications. We can send messages to all surviving forces now." She turned to Sarah. "Tell me what we need to say." Sarah hesitated for a moment, then spoke clearly. "Tell them to focus on disabling the scout ships first. They're smaller and easier targets. Once we take those out, we can concentrate on the larger fleet." Emily nodded and began typing the message into the system. As it transmitted, a wave of hope spread across the team. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had a plan. But their victory was short-lived. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor, followed by the unmistakable click of claws against metal. "They're coming," Sarah shouted, raising her rifle. The others scrambled into position, forming a defensive line around Emily, who continued working to lock down the system so that the Xylothians couldn't regain control. The door burst open, and 3 Xylothian soldiers stormed in, their armored bodies filling the narrow space. Their multifaceted eyes glowed with fury as they charged forward. Sarah fired first, hitting one of them squarely in the chest. It collapsed instantly, but the other 2 kept coming. Ryan and Alex joined the fight, their rifles blazing with blue energy. The aliens roared, swinging their claws wildly, forcing the team to dodge and weave to avoid being struck. Emily didn't stop working, even as the battle raged around her. Sweat dripped from her forehead as she typed commands into the console, her fingers trembling slightly. Finally, she slammed her hand down on a large button. "System locked," she yelled. "We're clear. Fall back," Sarah ordered, firing another shot to cover their retreat. The team backed toward the exit, keeping their weapons trained on the remaining Xylothians. Just as they reached the doorway, one of the creatures lunged at Ryan, knocking him to the ground. Before it could strike, Sarah fired point-blank, disintegrating it in a flash of light. Ryan scrambled to his feet, breathing hard. "Thanks," he managed to say, his voice shaky. Sarah gave him a quick nod before turning back to the corridor. "Let's move." They raced down the stairs, their footsteps echoing loudly in the confined space. Outside, the streets were still ablaze with conflict, but the tide seemed to be turning. Across the city, human forces armed with Eclipse weapons pushed back against the invaders. News of the recaptured communications tower spread quickly, boosting morale among the fighters. Civilians cheered as coordinated attacks began taking down more Xylothian scout ships. Back at the Antarctic facility, Dr. Laura Bennett received the transmission from the tower. Her face lit up with determination as she relayed the information to her team. "This is it," she said. "We have a chance to win this war." Under her guidance, production of Eclipse weapons ramped up, with factories around the world working non-stop to equip every available soldier and volunteer. As night fell over Los Angeles, Sarah and her team regrouped near the base of the tower. Exhausted but triumphant, they watched as flames consumed the remnants of an alien ship nearby. For the first time in days, there was a glimmer of hope in their eyes. The Tylothians weren't invincible. Humanity had fought back and won. But deep in space, Commander Vorak watched the events unfold from his flagship. His glowing eyes narrowed with anger as he processed the reports of defeat after defeat. He clenched his mandibles tightly, his mind racing. If Earth thought this was the end of the war, they were wrong. The humans had no idea what was coming next. The victory at the communications tower gave humanity a much-needed boost, but it was only the beginning. Across the globe, people rallied together, inspired by the stories of courage and resilience coming out of Los Angeles, Tokyo, and other cities. Factories worked around the clock to produce more Eclipse weapons, while volunteers stepped forward in droves to join the fight. Ordinary men and women, like Michael Scott, a farmer from Iowa, left their homes to defend Earth. Armed with rifles that once seemed like science fiction, they prepared for the battles ahead. In Antarctica, Dr. Laura Bennett pushed her team harder than ever. The success of the Eclipse weapons proved their potential, but she knew they needed to be even better. Using data gathered from recent engagements, she made critical improvements. The new prototypes were lighter, faster to charge, and capable of firing multiple shots before overheating. "This is our chance," she told her team as they tested the upgrades. "We can't afford to fail." Meanwhile, General Robert Carter coordinated a massive counteroffensive. With global communications restored, he directed military forces to target the Tylothian scout ships systematically. Pilots like Kevin Foster took to the skies, their modified fighter jets equipped with Eclipse cannons. The sleek aircraft roared through the atmosphere, engaging the alien vessels in fierce dogfights. Each successful hit brought cheers from ground forces and civilians alike. In New York City, Sarah Lewis and her team joined the growing resistance effort. They had become local heroes after retaking the communications tower, but there was no time to rest. The streets were still dangerous, with pockets of Tylothian soldiers holding key positions. Civilians looked to Sarah and her group for protection, and she felt the weight of their expectations. "We've got this," she told herself quietly, gripping her upgraded rifle tightly. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah led her team into an abandoned subway station. Intelligence reports suggested a large group of Tylothians was using it as a staging area. If they could clear it out, that'd weaken the invaders' foothold in the city. The descent into the tunnels was eerie, the air thick with dust, and the smell of decay. Shadows danced on the walls as they moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing softly. Suddenly, a low growl reverberated through the tunnel. Sarah raised her hand, signaling for the others to stop. Ahead, glowing eyes appeared in the darkness. Dozens of them. The Tylothians had been waiting. Without hesitation, Sarah fired the first shot, her beam striking an alien squarely in the chest. It collapsed instantly, but the rest charged forward, their claws clicking against the concrete floor. The battle was chaotic, with energy beams flashing in every direction. Despite being outnumbered, Sarah and her team held their ground. The improved Eclipse rifles made all the difference, allowing them to fire rapidly without overheating. One by one, the Tylothians fell, their bodies dissolving into ash. By the time the last alien was defeated, the team was exhausted, their faces streaked with sweat and dirt. But they had won. Above ground, similar victories played out across the world. In London, a coordinated attack destroyed a massive Tylothian supply depot. In Sydney, civilian volunteers used Eclipse pistols to drive invaders away from a power plant. Everywhere, humanity fought back with determination and ingenuity. The Tylothians began retreating, their numbers dwindling under the relentless assault. Back aboard his flagship, Commander Vorak watched in disbelief as his forces crumbled. His once invincible fleet was faltering, and for the first time, doubt crept into his mind. He summoned his top commanders, demanding answers. "Why are we losing?" he snarled, his voice sharp with anger. None of them had a satisfactory response. But Vorak wasn't ready to surrender. He ordered the deployment of his most powerful weapon, a devastating supercannon capable of obliterating entire cities. However, unknown to him, a small group of human scientists, including Dr. Alan Parker, had infiltrated the flagship during an earlier raid. As Vorak prepared to unleash destruction, the scientists worked quietly in the shadows, sabotaging the weapon systems. Humanity's fight was far from over, but for the first time, the Tylothians were on the defensive. From the frozen plains of Antarctica to the burning streets of New York, people dared to believe they could win. And with each victory, hope grew stronger. Commander Vorak's flagship loomed in orbit above Earth, a monstrous vessel bristling with weapons. Inside its metallic corridors, tension crackled like static electricity. The Tylothian leader paced back and forth on the command deck, his glowing eyes narrowed with frustration. Reports of defeat poured in from across the planet. Cities reclaimed by humans, scout ships destroyed, and entire squads of soldiers wiped out. For the first time in centuries, the Empire faced a threat it couldn't crush. Vorak clenched his mandibles tightly as he issued orders to his crew. "Activate the supercannon," he commanded, his voice cold and sharp. The weapon was the pride of the Tylothian fleet, a devastating piece of technology capable of leveling continents. It would send a clear message to humanity. Resistance was futile. But deep within the ship, unnoticed by the invaders, Dr. Alan Parker and his team of saboteurs worked quickly to ensure that message never reached Earth. The scientists had infiltrated the flagship days earlier during a daring raid led by Captain Emily Gray. Disguised in stolen Tylothian armor, they blended into the alien ranks, moving silently through the labyrinthine corridors. Now, hidden in a maintenance bay near the supercannon's core, they hacked into its systems. Their goal was simple but dangerous: disable the weapon before it could fire. Every second counted. Alan's hands trembled slightly as he connected a small device to the control panel. Lines of alien code scrolled across the screen, incomprehensible to most people, but not to him. Years of studying alien tech had prepared him for this moment. "Almost there," he whispered to his teammate, Lisa Monroe, who kept watch at the door. Her Eclipse pistol was ready, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of trouble. Suddenly, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. A group of Tylothian guards approached, their armored bodies clanking loudly. Lisa raised her weapon, her heart pounding. "We've got company," she hissed. Alan didn't look up. His fingers flew over the keypad, entering commands as fast as he could. "Just give me 30 seconds, he replied, his voice tight with urgency. Lisa fired the first shot as the guards rounded the corner, striking one of them squarely in the chest. It collapsed instantly, but the others charged forward, their claws raised. She fired again and again, each shot buying precious time for Alan. Behind her, another scientist named Mark stepped up, wielding a makeshift energy blaster cobbled together from scavenged parts. Together, they held off the advancing aliens. Finally, Alan let out a triumphant breath. "Got it," he exclaimed. The supercannon systems flickered and died, its power drained completely. Without waiting to celebrate, the team turned and ran, retracing their steps toward the escape pod bay. They moved swiftly, dodging patrols, and using narrow service tunnels to avoid detection. The flagship's alarms blared loudly now, alerting the entire crew to their presence. As they reached the bay, Lisa spotted 2 Tylothian soldiers guarding the pods. She exchanged a quick glance with Alan, who nodded grimly. "Cover me," she said, stepping into the open. The aliens turned toward her, their eyes glowing menacingly. Before they could react, Lisa fired, hitting one of them cleanly. Alan sprinted past her, sliding behind cover as the second soldier lunged forward. Mark took the shot, disintegrating the creature just in time. They reached the last available pod and piled inside, sealing the hatch behind them. As the pod launched, the flagship grew smaller in the distance. Below them, Earth spun peacefully, unaware of how close it had come to destruction. Alan leaned back in his seat, exhaustion washing over him. "We did it," he murmured. Lysa gave him a weak smile, though her hands still gripped her rifle tightly. Back on Earth, the sabotage went unnoticed at first. General Robert Carter monitored the situation closely, watching for any sign of retaliation from the Tylothians. When no attack came, confusion spread among the invaders' ranks. Commander Vorik raged at his subordinates, demanding answers, but none were forthcoming. The failure of the supercannon demoralized his forces, leaving cracks in their once unshakable confidence. For humanity, the victory was a turning point. Factories churned out more Eclipse weapons, equipping every available fighter. Civilians joined training programs, learning how to use the new technology. Sarah Lewis stood in a crowded square in Los Angeles, addressing a group of volunteers. "We're not just fighting for ourselves," she told them. "We're fighting for everyone who believes in freedom." The war wasn't over, but for the first time, humanity saw a path to victory. And as the sun rose over a battered but defiant planet, hope burned brighter than ever. The failure of the supercannon left Commander Vorik seething with rage. His once unstoppable fleet was crumbling, and his soldiers were losing ground on Earth. For the first time in his long career, he felt doubt creeping into his mind. The humans were proving to be far more resourceful than he had anticipated. Their weapons were powerful, their tactics unpredictable, and their determination unshakable. Despite this, Vorik refused to accept defeat. He ordered a full-scale assault on Earth's remaining defenses, vowing to crush humanity before they could strike again. On the planet below, General Robert Carter prepared for the final battle. Intelligence reports indicated that the Tylothians were massing their forces for one last push. Every available soldier, pilot, and volunteer was called to action. In cities around the world, people gathered in squares and streets, arming themselves with Eclipse rifles and makeshift tools. Civilians trained alongside military personnel, learning how to aim, fire, and reload under pressure. Sarah Lewis stood among them, her face set with quiet resolve. She had started as an ordinary police officer, but now she was a symbol of hope for her community. Kevin Foster, a fighter pilot from Chicago, climbed into the cockpit of his jet, gripping the controls tightly. His plane was retrofitted with an Eclipse cannon, its sleek design gleaming in the morning light. Around him, dozens of other pilots revved their engines, ready to take to the skies. "This is it," Kevin muttered to himself, glancing at a photo taped to the dashboard. It was a picture of his younger sister, who had been evacuated to a safe zone days earlier. He promised himself he would see her again. As dawn broke, the battle began. Thousands of human fighters surged forward, clashing with the Tylothian army in a storm of energy beams and explosions. In the skies, Kevin and his squadron engaged enemy ships, their jets weaving through the chaos like birds in flight. Each hit sent alien vessels spiraling out of control, their hulking forms crashing into the ocean or burning up in the atmosphere. On the ground, Sarah led her team through the ruins of Los Angeles, clearing out pockets of resistance and protecting civilians caught in the crossfire. The fighting was fierce, but humanity held its ground. The improved Eclipse weapons gave them an edge, allowing them to cut through the invaders' thick armor with ease. Civilians joined the effort, using whatever they could find to defend their homes. In New York, a group of teenagers armed with stolen rifles took down a squad of Tylothians trying to seize a hospital. In London, a retired mechanic rigged a truck with explosives and drove it straight into an alien patrol. Everywhere, stories of bravery and sacrifice spread, fueling the resistance. In space, Captain Emily Gray led a daring attack on the Tylothian fleet. Her ship, equipped with experimental Eclipse cannons, fired relentlessly at the invaders' vessels. The battle raged across the stars, with bursts of blue energy lighting up the darkness. Emily's voice crackled over the comms as she coordinated her team. "Focus on the smaller ships first," she ordered. "We can't let them regroup." One by one, the Tylothian ships fell, their glowing hulls shattering into fragments. But the flagship remained intact, hovering menacingly above Earth. Vorak watched the destruction from his command deck, his glowing eyes filled with fury. He ordered his crew to launch every remaining fighter and drone, desperate to turn the tide. Yet even as reinforcements poured into the fray, humanity continued to push back. Back on Earth, Dr. Laura Bennett monitored the battle from her lab in Antarctica. Her upgraded Eclipse weapons were performing better than she had hoped, but she knew the war wouldn't end until the flagship was destroyed. She contacted General Carter, urging him to focus all available firepower on the massive vessel. "That's their heart," she said firmly. "Take it out, and we win." Carter relayed the message to his forces. Pilots adjusted their trajectories, aiming their weapons at the looming flagship. Soldiers on the ground redirected artillery, firing salvos into the sky. Civilians cheered as they saw the massive ship begin to falter under the relentless assault. The final phase of the battle had begun, and though the cost had been high, humanity refused to give up. For the first time since the invasion began, the Tylothians wavered. Their numbers dwindled, their morale shattered. Commander Vorak stared at the screens showing his failing fleet, his mandibles clenched tightly. Humanity had proven itself stronger than anyone expected, including him. But the fight wasn't over yet. The final assault on the Tylothian flagship was humanity's greatest challenge yet. The massive vessel loomed in orbit, its surface bristling with weapons and glowing energy shields. It was a fortress in space, seemingly invincible. But humanity had come too far to back down now. Pilots, soldiers, and civilians alike poured every ounce of strength into the fight, determined to bring the invaders to their knees. Captain Emily Gray led the charge, her ship darting through a hail of enemy fire. Around her, human fighters swarmed like bees, targeting the flagship's defenses. Each shot from their Eclipse cannons and bursts of blue energy slamming into the alien hull. Slowly but surely, the shields began to weaken. "Keep firing," Emily shouted over the comms, her voice steady despite the chaos. Behind her, Kevin Foster and his squadron followed closely, their jets weaving through explosions and debris. On the ground, Sarah Lewis and her team worked tirelessly to support the aerial assault. Using ground-based Eclipse cannons mounted on trucks, they fired directly into space, aiming for weak points in the flagship's armor. Civilians operated the weapons alongside trained soldiers, their hands trembling but determined. Every hit brought cheers from the crowd gathered nearby, watching the battle unfold on large screens set up in the streets. For the first time in weeks, hope filled the air. Inside the flagship, Commander Vorak paced furiously on the command deck. His once mighty fleet was in ruins, and his soldiers were falling faster than he could replace them. The humans had proven to be relentless, their weapons devastating. Yet Vorak refused to surrender. He ordered his crew to launch one last wave of drones, hoping to overwhelm the attackers. "We will not lose," he growled, his voice sharp with desperation. But humanity wasn't about to let him succeed. Emily spotted the incoming drones and quickly adjusted her strategy. "Split into pairs," she instructed her team. "Take them out before they reach us." The pilots obeyed, breaking formation and engaging the drones in smaller groups. Kevin found himself flying side by side with another pilot, their jets moving in perfect sync as they destroyed drone after drone. The sky lit up with flashes of light as the machines exploded, leaving trails of smoke behind. As the drone threat faded, Emily turned her attention back to the flagship. Its shields were nearly gone, and cracks had begun to form along its surface. She knew this was their chance. "All units, focus fire on the core," she commanded. Her ship unleashed a barrage of energy beams, striking the heart of the flagship. Other pilots joined in, their combined firepower tearing through the weakened hull. Vorak watched in horror as alarms blared across the command deck. The flagship was failing, its systems collapsing under the relentless assault. He clenched his mandibles tightly, his mind racing. Escape was impossible. The humans would never allow it. For a moment, he considered activating the self-destruct sequence, hoping to take Earth with him. But something stopped him. A flicker of doubt. Was this truly the end? Had his empire's reign finally come to an end? Before he could decide, the bridge doors burst open. Captain Emily Gray stepped inside, her Eclipse rifle raised and ready. Behind her stood Jason Reed, a young hacker who had infiltrated the ship earlier. Together, they had fought their way through corridors filled with Xylothian soldiers, determined to confront Vorak personally. "It's over," Emily said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. Vorak glared at her, his glowing eyes filled with hatred. "You think you've won?" he snarled. "This is only the beginning." Without warning, he lunged forward, attempting to strike her down. But Emily was faster. She fired her rifle, hitting him squarely in the chest. Vorak stumbled, his body disintegrating into ash as he collapsed. With their leader gone, the remaining Xylothians fell into disarray. The flagship began to break apart, its engines failing and its structure crumbling. Emily and Jason barely made it to their escape pod in time, launching just as the vessel exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Below them, Earth erupted in cheers as the news spread. The Xylothian fleet was defeated. For the first time in what felt like forever, humanity could breathe easy. The war was won, though the cost had been high. Cities lay in ruins, lives had been lost, and scars would remain for generations. But amidst the devastation, there was hope. People came together to rebuild, united by their shared victory. As the sun rose over a battered but defiant planet, humanity took its first steps toward a brighter future. The war was over, but Earth bore the scars of its fight for survival. Cities once bustling with life now lay in ruins, their streets littered with debris and charred remains of buildings. Smoke still hung in the air in some places, a lingering reminder of the battles that had raged there. Yet despite the destruction, there was an undeniable sense of hope. People emerged from shelters and safe zones, their faces weary but determined. They began to clear away rubble, rebuild homes, and care for the wounded. Humanity had faced extinction and prevailed. In Los Angeles, Sarah Lewis stood on a hill overlooking the city. Her Eclipse rifle rested at her side, no longer needed for battle. She watched as volunteers worked together to construct temporary housing for displaced families. Children played nearby, their laughter cutting through the somber atmosphere like sunlight breaking through clouds. Sarah felt a lump in her throat as she realized how much had been lost, but also how much had been saved. She wasn't just a police officer anymore. She was part of something bigger, a movement that had united humanity against impossible odds. President William Hayes addressed the nation from Washington, D.C., his voice steady and reassuring. "We have endured one of the greatest trials in our history," he said, standing before a backdrop of American flags. "But we did not face it alone. Every man, woman, and child played a role in this victory. Together, we showed the universe that Earth will not be conquered." His words echoed across the globe, bringing tears to the eyes of millions who had fought, suffered, or lost loved ones during the war. Dr. Laura Bennett returned to her lab in Antarctica, where the remnants of Project Eclipse were being dismantled and studied. The technology that had saved humanity would now pave the way for a new era of innovation. Engineers and scientists worked around the clock to adapt the weapons into tools for peaceful purposes: energy generators, medical devices, and advanced communication systems. Laura knew the work was far from over. The Xylothians might be gone, but the universe held countless other dangers. Humanity needed to be ready. Kevin Foster landed his jet at an airbase outside Chicago, stepping out to a hero's welcome. Civilians waved flags and cheered as he walked past, shaking hands and thanking him for his service. He smiled politely, though his mind was elsewhere. All he wanted was to see his younger sister again. When he finally reunited with her at a shelter, she threw her arms around him, sobbing with relief. Kevin held her tightly, vowing never to take their time together for granted. Captain Emily Gray sat quietly in her quarters aboard a military ship, staring at a photo of her late brother. Jason Reed's sacrifice weighed heavily on her heart, but she found comfort in knowing his bravery had made all the difference. Without him, she might not have reached Vorik in time. She placed the photo gently on her desk and turned her attention to the stars outside her window. Earth was safe, but the galaxy was vast and full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered. As weeks passed, the world began to heal. Memorials were erected to honor those who had given their lives in the war. Schools reopened, businesses restarted, and communities came together to support one another. In every corner of the planet, people talked about what they had learned: resilience, unity, and the strength of the human spirit. Yet even as Earth rebuilt, leaders like President Hayes and General Carter warned against complacency. "This victory does not mean we are safe," Hayes said in a televised speech. "It means we must prepare for whatever comes next." Under Dr. Laura Bennett's guidance, efforts began to expand Eclipse technology, creating defenses capable of protecting Earth from future threats. The stars twinkled brightly in the night sky, a reminder of both danger and opportunity. Humanity had taken its first steps toward becoming a galactic power. Though the road ahead would be long and uncertain, one thing was clear: Earth was no longer alone in the universe. And if another empire ever dared to threaten its people, humanity would be ready.